Yeah, so thanks everybody, and thank you for all of your interest in coming to today's meeting, and thank you Eric and Karen and all the organizers for spearheading this effort. It's appreciated. Like Eric had mentioned, this is a work group that was going pretty well until the recent retirement of Michael Jurdy, and so we're trying to get it reinvigorated again. So this is great. My name is Chris Jones, for those of you who don't know me, and I am one of the 1.5 PYs or staff for the California Water Quality Monitoring Council. I serve as the assistant director. What I figured we would do today, just because many of you may not be as familiar with the Monitoring Council and its efforts, I'll be giving just a brief introduction about the council and how it was formed, and kind of the goals of the council, and kind of the roles that we're thinking that the Safe to Swim work group could play moving forward. So I'll go to the next slide.
Working on it.
No worries. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. So the Monitoring Council was created in response to legislation that was passed back in 2006, Senate Bill 1070. And the legislation essentially tasked the council with kind of a dual charge. First was to try to improve coordination among monitoring efforts that relate to water quality and ecosystem health statewide. And then also trying to make sure that the data that are collected from those oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if somebody was asking a question. And then, also just trying to make sure that the data that were collected from these various monitoring efforts, that they're available via the internet. And so, go on to the next slide. And so, in 2007, in response to the legislation, the Monitoring Council was formed after an MOU was signed between the Cal EPA and Natural Resources Agency. And so that's where the agency secretaries for Cal EPA and Natural Resources signed the MOU to essentially require that the different organizations within those two agencies should take part in these efforts, and that they saw value in the work that we were doing. And so they created the Monitoring Council in response to that legislation. And so, like I mentioned, the council has a statewide scope. It includes, all surface waters, along with the associated ecosystem and wildlife populations and habitats and groundwater. So groundwater is something that we haven't really gotten into yet, but just with the recent droughts, we've been kind of thinking about potentially expanding to that as well. But so it's a pretty broad scope. The strategy for the council has been to our two charges that we were initially charged with from Senate Bill 1070 was, like I mentioned, to try to improve coordination and collaboration. And so to do that, we've created our theme-specific work groups. And so we have work groups that focus on different areas of water quality and ecosystem health. So obviously Safe to Swim is one of those. But then we also have groups that look into drinking water safety or harmful algal blooms, and also wetlands. So in our ecosystem health work groups, we have wetland work group, or a wetland monitoring work group, the estuaries work group, and Healthy Watersheds Partnership. And so there are a variety of groups that look at different questions. A lot of these groups formed through kind of the beneficial uses kind of framework that we were kind of initially, that was kind of part of our initial charge, was kind of using some of the beneficial uses to kind of structure the council. And then kind of for that second charge of trying to make the data from those monitoring efforts available, the Monitoring Council has created its theme-specific portals. And so so that's one of the things that we'll probably talk about today at some point, is trying to make data available in a form that is not just accessible to resource managers or scientists, but the public. And so the council has really strived to try to have the portals be accessible to a variety of audiences, and especially for the work groups that focus on questions like, the Safe to Swim work group, where it's very important for public safety and public awareness, to try to make the content really accessible and user-friendly for a general audience and the public. So that's kind of the gist of what the council's background and goals. Move on maybe to the next slide. So more recently, the council has been going through some kind of reflections, trying to think through our lessons learned. We had a triennial audit a few years ago, which was part of our strategy and I think mentioned in our MOU with Cal EPA and Natural Resources, that we would do these regular kind of reviews, those triennial audits. And so those audits during the last audit, which was in 2014, December of 2014, I believe, we had all the work groups kind of reflect on how they were doing in terms of performing relative to our strategy and the performance measures that were in our strategy document. And so we had a lot of lessons learned at that point. We tried to learn and adapt from the feedback that we were receiving from the various work groups. And so one of the things that we are now doing is trying to update our strategy to try to adapt to the feedback that we received, but also the work or from some other recent legislation that's been passed in more recent years. And so there was a recent legislation that some of you may be familiar with, AB 1755, which is the Open and Transparent Water Data Act. And that legislation has a very similar charge to the Monitoring Council, and it was essentially an act that required that basically all state agencies and even federal agencies just make their data available through a centralized platform or portal. And so it kind of was focusing on some of the areas that the council strategy was kind of covering. So we're currently going through some modifications to try to adapt to the current climate, those current efforts. And so one of the things that we had recently done was we formed a subcommittee. We've established some different areas where we felt that the council adds value. And this is kind of relevant for the discussions today because some of those may relate to some of the discussions and efforts that this group may want to consider moving forward. So if you want to move on to the next slide. So we had during our discussions of what the council might want to consider, how we might want to change course and kind of shift our focus slightly and refine our mission. We had a subcommittee where we had those discussions to try to figure out where does the council add value? Where does it add value for the state of California? And so there were 5 that kind of rose to the top, and I'll just kind of quickly go through those. But when I'm going through these, maybe think about what this work group, how they might be applied to what the work group be able to consider for efforts. So, for example, the first focus area, looking at whether or not the monitoring programs are actually designed effectively to answer the questions that are important for the relative efforts. So, for example, having performance measures to evaluate monitoring programs. We found through some of the work with the council that, though there's a lot of disparate different groups looking at different questions to kind of look at statewide questions of, whether it's water quality or ecosystem health related questions, that sometimes the monitoring programs don't really get at the questions that you need to answer. And so, for example, I'll just raise an example that's kind of a good one for the council's efforts was the wetland monitoring work group, for example. They formed around the central question of whether or not there are any no net loss of wetlands in California. But what they found by bringing together all these various partners, state and federal and tribal and various groups, that we don't actually collect the data and we don't have programs that actually would allow us to assess those questions. And that was a question that was highlighted by a previous administration as something that was an important question for the state of California to pursue. But what we found was that we just didn't have the data to actually assess that question. And so those are one of the examples of what we thought that the work groups may want to consider to see if there's ways that they can try to, fill in those gaps and try to address questions better to actually achieve certain outcomes. So this next focus area was relating to data quality and methods consistency across monitoring programs. So as I mentioned, and is relevant for the various groups collecting the data that we're talking about today, is that there are different groups that are collecting data through various monitoring programs. Is there a way that the group could try to coordinate where possible to try to improve data quality standards and have a common, have resources to be able to support those different groups so that they can have similar data quality standards, so that there's at least a known and documented quality for those data that are being collected. In addition, just method consistency, so making sure that if data are pooled, that you can be able to answer questions effectively and correctly by pooling data from various sources, if possible. So those are some questions that this group may want to consider. Was there a question?
I'm sorry, just rustling.
Okay, no worries. And the third focus area was relating to the interpretation of data thresholds. So, so that you can be able to turn data into information. So essentially what that's meaning is that there's a lot of data that's being collected for various programs that there aren't really any thresholds that are established to be able to assess conditions. So one example is harmful algal blooms, that this has really become more of an issue in recent years, particularly with the drought, where we're having blooms occur throughout the state. But we currently don't really have any kind of thresholds or standards to be able to assess conditions, to be able to say if they're harmful conditions to be exposed to, for example. And so that's an area where the monitoring council's work groups are trying to get around to try to address those kind of needs and those questions. And so that may be something that in some instances may relate to the Safe to Swim work group, especially for the harmful algal bloom question is very relevant for swimming safety. And so there may be an opportunity for even collaboration with one of our other work groups, the harmful algal bloom or the CCHAB group, moving forward, if that would be of interest to this group. And then if you want to go on to the next slide. And then the fourth focus area that the council highlighted was that there is a lot of different emerging technology and methods that are being developed. And what the council has realized is that the council could play a role in being able to support those needs. So for example, a lot of molecular methods are being used, which may be relevant for the Safe to Swim work group. So for example, using molecular methods to be able to assess, different type of bacteria that are in the waters or other kind of things, and to be able to quickly assess conditions using molecular methods. The council has recognized that there are a lot of different agencies and groups and programs that are using molecular methods currently, but there really isn't a coordinating body to try to help to address how the data are collected, how they're quality controlled, how they're documented, all the different things that you might want to think about for coordinating that will help in a broader use of those data sets moving forward. And so the council has considered, for example, for the molecular methods, we're in the process of trying to form a work group to try to statewide coordinate the different groups that are using these methods and to try to address different challenges and questions so that we're looking at these things in a more efficient and coordinated manner. So that's another effort that maybe this group might want to consider looping into for one of the other council's efforts, or play a part in that as we move forward. And the last one was just relating to another topic that's very relevant to this group, is just trying to support the coordination of various monitoring programs that are from local and regional entities and other groups to try to coordinate those efforts across the state. And so what we are looking to do is trying to create opportunities. We discussed this at the last monitoring council meeting to try to brainstorm how we could kind of bring in some of the more smaller local groups. But what we're doing is trying to apply these kind of these opportunities to some of the other groups that are currently in existence, or even the Safe to Swim work group, to try to see if there are opportunities to just bring these groups together for coordination, whether they're bigger monitoring programs statewide that we want to kind of combine efforts as is relevant for this group, or just trying to bring in citizen monitoring groups and other groups that might be collecting data and try to engage those groups in a way that we could kind of leverage the various monitoring programs or efforts that are taking place statewide. So these are some of the various areas that the council was seeing that we could help to kind of really focus on moving forward, that we're trying to identify opportunities that are kind of unique to the council and ways that we can try to kind of adapt to some of the other kind of related efforts that have been sprung up, like I mentioned, the AB 1755 effort, and to try to kind of carve out a niche that's unique to the council. And so, that's kind of the gist for those focus areas. With that, that's kind of the background on the council and kind of where we're moving forward. With that, I'll hand it over to Eric. He'll provide some kind of context and background for the Safe to Swim work group that may be helpful to kind of set the stage for the discussions today. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to take a few minutes to let folks understand the history of the work group, especially because you're probably already doing some Safe to Swim stuff with a different working group. So Chris mentioned, things kicked off in 2007. 2008, we released this document, maximizing the efficiency and effectiveness of water quality data collection and dissemination, and ensuring that collected data are maintained and available for use by decision makers and the public. Within this document, they really talked about issue-specific work groups. And Chris mentioned, our work group, Safe to Swim, but also the Wetlands Working Group. We're one of those working groups that was dreamed about back in 2008. Also, they were looking at how do we disseminate this information on the internet, and it's through these web-based portals, feed-based portals. How many of you in the room have visited the Safe to Swim portal? Less than half. See, we got some work to do. We need to make it usable for the public and usable for y'all. So, under the oversight of the Monitoring Council, we put together this work group in 2010. How many of you have been working on Safe to Swim issues prior to 2010? Yeah, quite a few. Well, in 1998, we had the Safe to Swim working group down here in Southern California, the Collaborative Beach Water Quality Work Group. Meetings right here in this room. In 2004, that model was replicated in Northern California. So things were happening before the Monitoring Council developed and put together this working group. So they leveraged these working groups so that we could have a functional Safe to Swim work group statewide, but the focus had been coastal. We tried to see what we could do to bring in inland waters. And thankfully, in 2015, we had enough people step forward to have a new working group. membership of that was pretty much just within state board, within our SWAP program. Alicia Wenzel is representing that group, and she is in the room with us today. So if you have questions, Alicia's here. She's going to be giving us a presentation a little bit later this morning. So just to highlight what came out of that 2013 report that Chris mentioned, the purpose of the group is to coordinate monitoring and assessment, not to coordinate, hey, this is the project we're going to do, but try to bring all these different groups together so that we could collaborate and also inform the public collectively, so that we have one place where the public can go and really get awesome information. It's okay to have your information locally, but what can we do statewide to really bring a focus to this work that we're doing? Two primary questions that the working group is trying to address is, what do agency decision makers and the public really want to know about swimming safety on a local, regional, and statewide basis? And then how can we best inform this decision making? So those are the things that the working group had been discussing. Those are things that we need to discuss. In addition to those primary questions that the working group developed, we had a couple questions that were given to us by the data management work group. Those were, what are the problems in data management? What data sets should be a priority for access? What are the data gaps and what data restrictions currently exist? These have been the issues that have been bogging down the work group historically. We identified some of those issues and been working on those, and we're still trying to iron out some of those data management issues so that we can get data into our statewide database using Beachwatch, using CDIN, and informing the public and decision makers through the web portal for water quality. In addition, we came up as a work group with 13 items that were of interest to the work group members. They were separated into three themes. What are the current threats to my beach water quality? Is it safe to swim at freshwater beaches? And what water quality data is available? Some of the things that were proposed in another document, 2013, we've actually seen some traction on. Integrate Safe to Swim website with existing smartphone applications and websites. So we've had NGOs participate in this with the Beach Report Card and Swim Guide. We conducted an informal survey of monitoring entities, reaching out to people that are monitoring or using the monitoring data to inform Safe to Swim decisions. It was a struggle to get returns. People really didn't care too much in their throughout the state's counties about Safe to Swim issues. That's beginning to change in a significant way. Issues like down in San Diego, where hepatitis outbreaks have been happening, homeless population explosion in the Bay Area, water quality issues in the Sacramento area. Third one down, developing a priority list for addressing with data management restrictions. That was worked on. Now we're trying to work on resolving those issues. Fourth one down, expand coverage of Safe to Swim by adding inland waters to the Safe to Swim portal website. We are trying to work on that with a current program and then bringing in more players with the inland water Safe to Swim. I work with citizen monitoring programs, and we are actually integrating into CDIN citizen monitoring data. We have lots of groups in inland waters where the only people that are doing the monitoring are citizen groups. Then lastly, identified developing recommendations for long-term agency involvement and financial support of Safe to Swim portal and the work group. And it's marked red because, yeah, we haven't gone anywhere on that one. Yeah. Funding has been a big issue. We can work together on how we can address our shortfalls and try to get more resources for the work that we're doing. This is the list. I don't think this is online anymore. We're going to try to revitalize our meeting information. But this is a list of 13 items that the work group in 2011 thought were important. I'm not going to read through those for sake of time management, but most of these are still things that we think are probably important. I think we do need to develop a committee to take a look at this. Is it reflecting what's important today and what's important to the people that are attending our meeting today? So this is our portal screen at the My Water Quality. There at the top in the middle there, it's safe to swim. People click on that and you can get lots of information. That's the web page. So this is where we're trying to support this as a work group. And this is where we need to have people inform us, are we answering the right questions? Are we presenting the data in a usable way for the public and for decision makers? And then lastly, we have our work group website as well. This is not for the public, it's publicly accessible, but this is to help us so we can communicate and share tools and resources. We have many websites at State Board on beaches, Safe to Swim, Beach Initiative, lots of things. But we need one place where we can just go and have direction for those resources, and also so that we can talk amongst ourselves. When are our meetings? What are our resources? I missed the meeting. Can I get a recording? What are some of the newer tools that are being talked about? We can have the web links up here. Is EPA having their, the beach conference? We can put those links up here. We don't need to have, 15 websites, tagged on our laptop or computer at the office to get this information. We want to be able to have a working group webpage that's usable. So definitely need comments on that from you guys so that we can improve this. It's been lingering, and in the transition with Michael leaving, a lot of useful content isn't there anymore. So we need to make sure that we can put the right content on there. So we'll be talking to some of you about that. With that, thank you for your time. Chris?
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to move ahead with the next item.
What was that?
We were going to move to your presentation, back to your presentation, Chris, but this is Karen. I just wanted to
Give a quick update on the website. So I've been working on updating the website to include all of the beach water quality work group presentations, to include future agendas, contact information for the presenters so that you can reach out directly to them. So we've been working on getting some of that stuff up there, but there's definitely a lot of improvements that are going to be needed. We want all of your input so that we can make it, useful for you. And like Eric was saying, we want to have one location where you can go to find all of the information that you need and make it intuitive and searchable so that you can find what you need instead of like, oh, what subcategory do I need to go to and all of that. So one of the reasons that I wanted to gather the quality assurance project plans from all the counties was to help us bring consistency to all of the monitoring programs across the state so that we have comparable data, and then to be able to upload it to the state system portal with that map image you saw so that it has the inland data and the ocean data all together. And we have ideas for the future too as far as combining layers of different data sets so you can see it all together. So we've got stuff in the works, but we've got some time to go through. So Chris, I'm gonna go through to your section and take it away.
Great. And I apologize, I am double booked, so I have a presentation that I'm giving at another meeting at 10:30, so I'll switch over after I'm finished here, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. So, as we're talking about today, just trying to, reboot or, kind of reinvigorate the work group. One of the things that, we had discussed was that maybe it would be worth going through the exercise at some point to develop a charter so that because it's bringing together various groups, being able to lay out, what the goals of the group are, how the groups interact, those type of details could be good to kind of hash out, and a charter would be a good way of doing that. So you can go to the next slide. And so, obviously, I'm sure most of us have gone through the process of going through charters, but, some of their benefits are just to be able to establish what the goals and purpose of a group is. And so, what, we're thinking of doing is developing a subcommittee to kind of start looking through those questions. And we can even start, discussing those today. Essentially, some of the roles that this group could play would be, as we're talking about, just serve as a venue for statewide coordination. There are these various groups that are collecting relevant monitoring data, and what we could do is view this group, the Safe to Swim work group under the council, as an opportunity to try to bring those various groups together to try to fill in kind of a bigger picture for the state of California. And so that's something that this group could consider moving forward. In additional, as Eric and Karen were mentioning, having the statewide portal is another resource that this group could help serve to promote and enhance. And so, the various data that's being collected, trying to make those data available through the Safe to Swim portal. That's a resource that we're hoping to kind of fill in and to continue to improve, just because, when people are wondering where to go to swim in their area, it's, often nicer to be able to look at a statewide picture and to kind of see all the information that's available in one location. And so that's what the statewide portal could serve as. And then also, that could also highlight gaps that are currently underway or that exist for monitoring data, and maybe this group could consider trying to fill in certain gaps or try to coordinate with other groups or identify efforts that could fill in gaps in the monitoring data and the locations that data is being collected. And as I mentioned with the top 5 areas, maybe looking into the methods consistency and streamlining processes so that data is or the data that's being collected or the monitoring samples and information that's collected could be processed quicker. So maybe like through some sort of coordinated methodology, and that this group could help to further develop those, such as the molecular methods. So that was just kind of to get the juices going for people, but really we thought that this discussion could, I guess, start off by just starting, we've been talking a lot, so want to hear from the folks in the room and on the phone, whether or not they, the things that we're talking about resonate with them, if it seems like the things that we're discussing seem to be of importance to the various groups that are involved, and what could the role of this group be? We can, start discussing opportunities for, the coordination aspects this group could provide. What are the priority areas that this group could serve to, promote? Those types of mission and goals kind of questions are something that this we could just start discussing today, as well as just the role of the group relative to the other groups. So one of the points that we wanted to make is that people shouldn't view that a Safe to Swim work group is by any means replacing the other existing monitoring groups that are currently monitoring in California. Rather, it's more of a venue to try to promote broader coordination statewide. And so that could be something that a charter could help to flesh out, to kind of put those concerns at rest if that is a concern for folks. So that's kind of where we were thinking that the charter could help to kind of lay that stuff out, help to kind of identify goals so that the work group has a clear focus and purpose. So anyways, with that, I can open it up to other, Karen or Eric, if you have anything else to add. But one of the questions that we could start off with is, what are the mission and goals that this group could provide? What are important topics that this group could serve to address that are of importance to the various groups? I don't know if that's something that would be a good conversation starter.
Yeah, so if anyone in the room, I have these fun little microphones, I can come and break one and set it up next to you. Does anyone have any suggestions of things they want to add to the charter or wants to volunteer themselves or their staff to help us write some of the charter?
Well, right now we don't have a charter. We do have examples. Chris, we have 3 working groups that have really good charters, correct?
Correct. So I believe Eric and Karen had included links to those in the agenda. Those are some examples that people can look to. We can do those now if you want. But essentially, the areas that they're the common kind of sections of the charters that the various examples show is providing some background for the work group. What are the mission and goals? Those are kind of the things that I was mentioning. And then also it could go into questions like meeting frequency, the role of the membership and leadership in the group. Those types of questions can be addressed in the charter. You can also discuss as I mentioned, meeting frequency. I would say meet as frequently as the group thinks is necessary. There's no need to have monthly meetings or whatever if there doesn't seem to be a need for that. They could be twice a year if that was what is of importance. And what often is something that's useful is having subcommittees that if come and go depending on the need, and those can be meeting more frequently based on the need. So those kind of details can be addressed through the charter, and those are kind of common themes that you'll see in the examples that were included in the agenda. And one of the other things, just those can be short documents too. So don't be afraid of taking part because it's a lengthy document. They could be 1 or 2 pages, depending on how detailed you want to get. So yeah, sorry, I don't know if Karen, you were starting to say something.
Yeah, that's okay. So another thing we want to do with the charter is to clarify the differences between the beach group, the inland group, and the safe to swim group. We don't want to duplicate any of the same efforts and have the same things being discussed. I think that was it, yeah. Yeah, the charter really is to help us understand our relationships with the Monitoring Council and with other organizations. If you've ever been with a nonprofit or established an entity, having a roadmap for that group is very important, and that's what the charter does. It's like a work plan, but without all the tasks associated with it. We do have a presentation queued up, but I think this would be a good time for us to go around our table and introduce yourself, and if you'd like to participate in this initial step here of helping us form a charter. The charter's not for us. We have our job. We're going to do what we need to do, but in order to really get a working group that's functional and has direction and clarity, we need to get participation from outside state. With that, let's start with introductions and such from this corner. Okay.
My name is Jenny Marcon. I'm Supervising Environmental Health Specialist from Riverside County. I actually work in the food and pool program, so I'm here just to kind of absorb as much information on all of this as I can, so it's fairly new to me.
Oh, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
My name's Kristen Warch. I'm also with the County Environmental Health. Here just doing kind of background research for a presentation that we'll be giving in September.
Diane O'Donoghue, City and County of San Francisco, Water, Power, and Sewer. I'm going to make quite a trip here. But I've been 2010 while following the portals and was actually helping with those 13 questions. So I don't think I can devote much time right now to the charter, though.
Jason Freshwater of Santa Ana Regional Board. I'm the rep for the Southern California Beach Water Quality Monitoring Group, and so this is when you're up from that, and I recently went to the Water Quality Monitoring Council, which is another step up, and I'm just kind of getting an idea of organizationally the hierarchy of how this is working out. I deal mostly with the MBLs, And so I'm kind of at the bottom of that stack, I guess.
I'm Jeremy Haas. I'm from the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board. I think we might be interested in helping with the charter, but kind of like Jason says, I'm not really sure what the opportunities are, given there's the local group, the Southern California Beach Group, there's a statewide group, and then there's like the council. And so it's a little better understanding maybe of what the possibilities are. We would be in a better position to help.
This is where we make our possibilities.
So, we just finished a triennial review of our own beach water quality recreational standards kind of concurrent with the state board. And so we learned a few things and have a lot of kind of questions that came out of that. And I don't know if a statewide safe swim group is the place to ask those questions, or if it should be the Southern California one where it's more kind of local specific. But I can mention a couple if you're interested, see what happens. Great, okay. And then I'll just say we also, Helen Yu from our office is calling in, and so she might have some things to add if you go to the phone. But the first one is really kind of fundamental, is how safe is safe, right? So is the standard that EPA is suggesting the states adopt are we cool with that? It's 32,
Yeah, in order to keep on time,
that's one.
Thanks for those. Can you share those with me and I'll send those out?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to help out, or people can chit-chat during the breaks and stuff.
Okay, thank you.
And sorry to interrupt real quick. I just wanted to say this is Chris Jones, and I have to switch over to my other presentation. But thanks you all for taking part, and I think this is an important conversation, and I appreciate you guys taking part today. So with that, I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Chris. Hey, Chris, I have a question before you sign off. Is there a listserv that all the participants here can sign up for to get announcements from the Water Quality Monitoring Council, future meetings, stuff like that?
Yeah, so we do have the LIRIS list for the Monitoring Council as a whole, and we should still have a LIRIS list set up for the Safe to Swim work group, but I believe that that's still active on the State Board's website. So if you guys, you can show them the link to the LIRIS list sign-up sheet or the sign-up page on the State Board site if you want, and people can sign up for any of the council's efforts that they'd want to. So, but yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to let me know.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome. All right, thank you.
We have some detailed information on how you can sign up for all of the current working groups details. Let's continue to go around the table here quickly.
Excuse me, Andrea Crampacker, I'm with Western Solutions. I've been involved with the Beach Water Quality Group for quite a while, but this is new, and I was kind of trying to figure out the hierarchy, how things are working.
It's not always a hierarchy. It's just an amalgamation of things.
Okay, well that helps clarify too. So yeah, I'm willing to help with whatever, as long as I can figure out what something meaningful to do.
Hi, I'm Josh Westfall with the Sanitation District of LA County.
James Fortuna, I'm with Orange County Public Works and Stormwater Program. Participate in other beach water quality efforts like our colleagues here, so we're just learning. Yeah, Paul Blue with Orange County Public Works, South Orange County Water and Assessment. I work with beach water quality, but it's my first time work group. Christian Lannon, I'm with the Third Party Foundation. I've basically been collecting data of the different beach water quality monitoring programs around the country. I really like the Safe to Swim program. So here to learn more about it.
Amanda Wagner with Field and Bay. I personally do more inland water quality monitoring, but that'd be.
Ryan Searcy with Field and Bay. I run our Comcast Free Quality program. I also help oversee the beach water program, and we certainly have a lot at the state to see the support groups succeed. I think we're particularly interested in having kind of a one-stop shop of being able to obtain bacterial data that's up to date and in one place.
I'm Mark Sartain, also with the State Water Resources Control Board. And we'll hear from you next. So.
Yeah, you'll hear all about bacteria in a minute. So, Alicia Winslow, I work with the Central Valley Regional Water Board. I'm the swamp coordinator there, the surface water ambient monitoring program. And for the past decade, we've been doing summer recreation monitoring in freshwater swimming areas. And I'm also one of the few members on our inland beaches work group. And we're hoping to get some more membership and hopefully keep that going.
My name's Lisa Frias. I'm with Orange County Health Agencies. I'm the Environmental Health Director, and so definitely would be willing to have staff participate in helping the term.
I'm Craig Wong. I'm with the City of Long Beach Environmental Health. We do monitoring 15 sites on a weekly basis in the city, ocean and bay sites. And we're nearby, so we're interested in helping with whatever way we can to get any sub-committee activity or committee activity, so we can come whenever you want to have a meeting and participate.
I'm Rafael Maestro with the State Water Board, Office of Information Management and Analysis. I'm Chief Data Scientist, and what we do is trying to bring all the data sets that we have at the water boards into information that can be used and shared with the public. And I have a lot of visualizations about the Beach Watch data sets that we're sharing.
Ryan Dwight, Coastal Water Quality Group, and more than happy to help out with offerings further. Clearly, the Safe to Swim word needs better definition, and if we're just talking about bacterial standards or also other issues with safety, so just those types of delineations.
That's great stuff to go into the charter.
I'm Heather Boyd with the Santa Ana Regional Water Board. I'm the swamp coordinator and I'm also I don't know if I have time to discuss this charter, but I'm certainly
David Jensen, Section Chief over Food and Waterborne Diseases, fairly thankful to talk about.
I'm really close to my workplace, so I've been involved a lot with the beach water quality work group. For the Safe to Swim, I mostly have been kind of just interested in sharing knowledge, scientific knowledge, and sharing insights. So I'm happy to contribute in other ways I can. In my current job, we're developing fully automated systems to make that to be lower the barrier to use genetic methods. So hopefully that could be useful for the group as well.
Brett Hansen from Global Environmental Legacy Foundation, bring new innovative sciences from universities and through reclamation. Solutions for the pollution problems. So I'm very interested in helping out with the charter.
We can now take folks on the phone. If you could introduce yourself, put yourself off mute and then back on mute.
This is Brian Courier, Office Water Programs at Sacramento State, and like many others, I'm just listening in and figuring out what role I might play.
Hi, this is June. I'm sorry. Hi, this is
Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. This is June calling from Regional Water Board, Los Angeles region. I'm a swamp coordinator for the region. Thank you.
Hi, this is Lori Weber with the State Water Board, and I'm the project lead on the new bacteria objectives that Lark's going to talk about in the next presentation.
Hi, this is Helen Yu calling from San Diego Water Board. Jeremy just mentioned I have been participating in the Southern California, the Beach Water Quality Group, and this time is trying to understand more about the organization, the association between the Water Council and the different groups.
Hi, this is Jennifer Kraut with Humboldt Baykeeper, and we've been working on a genetic study with the regional board and county public health, and also interested to hear Megan's talk about homeless camps. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Go ahead.
Sorry, hi everyone, this is Michelle Pang. I'm with the Swamp Unit here at the State Water Board, and later I'll be presenting a potential update to the Safe to Swim portal map.
All right. I don't think anyone else will be speaking. This is Marissa Van Dyke, also at the State Water Board in the Swamp IQ Unit. I'm currently the Bacteria Data Manager, and I also work on quality assurance for bacteria data and that kind of thing. I'm not sure what role I would play on that, but I can help with some like the technical information, especially like defining key terms, perhaps part of the charter. But yeah, please be included. Thank you.
Kelly Goodwin, NOAA. I don't know whether there's a role for me yet, but that's why I'm listening in now.
This is Darcy Ebentier. I'm with Wood Environment and Infrastructure.
Great. I see a couple other people that are just on the web that are probably too shy to call in and announce themselves. So if you could email Eric and or myself, just so that we know you participated and any information about how you could participate, that would be great.
Thank you.
All right. I got Scott McReynolds and Kevin Moncrief from DWR up in Oroville, and we're listening in because we're developing a monitoring plan for our FERC relicensing, and we've got a pretty large bacteria monitoring program we're going to have to put in place, and we're very interested in having the Safe to Swim portal as our outlet for information. So as we can help, we will.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Sam Safi from Regional SAN in Sacramento. Just trying to learn what the work group is about.
Hi, this is Bev Anderson from Office of Information Management and Analysis up in at the State Water Board, and I don't know what role I could play, but interested in all the data that's coming in and how we might use that in performance measures perhaps, or just working with the data.
Great, thanks, Beth. I think we got everybody on the phone, so we're going to go ahead and continue to Lark's presentation. If you could go ahead and mute yourself again if you're on the phone. Thanks. Hi, everybody. So I'm Lark Sardian from the State Water Resources Control Board. And just to get a feeling of how many have already seen this, who was on this webinar last Friday? Okay, so not a ton of people, that's good. If you were, it's not a ton of new information, so apologies in advance. Moving forward, so as many of you know, this project's been in the works for quite a while. We started out in July 2014. We had one release of our documents in January of 2018, and then we just recently re-released our revised documents on July 6th, so about a week and a half ago. And we will be taking the bacteria provisions to the board on August the 7th. And so again, the meeting is going to be on August 7th, and this is for adoption of Part 3 of the Water Quality Control Plan for inland surface waters to establish that, and then also to amend the Water Quality Control Plan for the ocean sands, the bacteria provisions. And so the Part 3 of the SWEDI and the Ocean Plan Amendment are referred to as bacteria provisions, and the provisions are essentially the regulations for the bacteria. And I'm going to go over the bacteria provisions, the purpose of them, illness rate, the objectives, the effects on basin plans, the limited water contact recreation beneficial use, implementation provisions, the water quality standards variance, and impact on other programs and regulations. So the purpose of the bacteria provisions is primarily to protect public health. They also provide statewide consistency and avoid the need for individualization plan amendments. And they help to align state objectives with the U.S. EPA objectives for further consistency. There is an illness rate and definition, water quality objectives, a beneficial use definition, again, that limited water context for recreation or LRF 1 beneficial use. And they identify implementation elements and identify water quality standards variance policies. Okay, so this graph depicts the U.S. EPA 2012 recreational water quality criteria recommendations for illness rates. So they had two recommended illness rates, both which they decided were equally protective, one at 32 per 1,000 primary contact recreators, and one at 36 per 1,000 primary contact recreators. They also established thresholds for enterococcus and E. coli that aligned with those recommended illness rates. And so we are proposing the slightly more protective illness rate of 32 per 1,000 primary contact recreators. And as a bit of a refresher, the bacteria objectives that are currently in the ocean plan are for total coliform, fecal coliform, and enterococcus, as well as the total coliform to fecal coliform ratio. They're calculated by a 30-day geometric mean and a single sample maximum. For the inland waters, there's no current statewide objectives, so the regional boards all have a different objective. And so, for example, in the Colorado River, they have an objective for E. coli, enterococcus, and fecal coliform, while in the Central Coast, they only have a fecal coliform objective. And so, again, by providing a statewide objective, it's going to help to provide some consistency. And so going back to the January release of documents, this is what was proposed. So for all waters where the salinity is equal to or less than 1 part per thousand by 95% or more of the time, we are proposing a sole indicator of E. coli. And so this is fresh waters. I should clarify that, so lakes and rivers and et cetera. For all waters where salinity is greater than 1 part per thousand, more than 5% of the time, we're proposing enterococcus as the sole indicator. And so this is ocean waters, but it's also potentially things like inland bays or estuaries. We were proposing a 6-week geometric mean instead of the 30-day geometric mean, and a statistical threshold value instead of a single sample maximum. And again, attaching that illness rate of 32 per thousand primary contact recreators. Okay, so moving forward to our current proposal and the documents that were released a few weeks ago. For the inland surface waters, enclosed bays, and estuaries, the SWD provisions, nothing changed. So we still have, I should say nothing changed as compared to those January documents. Things did change as compared to what we currently have. So for the SWD waters, we are proposing E. coli as that sole indicator for fresh waters, rivers and lakes, et cetera. And enterococcus for the sole indicator for inland saline waters, enclosed bays and estuaries, et cetera. It's going to be calculated with a 6-week rolling geometric mean and a statistical threshold value. I'm going to go over the geometric means and the statistical threshold value and all those kind of calculation methods a little bit later on in the presentation as well. Give you a heads up. They're calculated in colony forming units, and we're using that same illness rate of 32 per 1,000. All right, and so for ocean waters is where the change really happened as compared to the January release of the document. So now, instead of only having an enterococcus as the sole indicator for ocean waters, we're proposing to add an enterococcus objective and retain the fecal coliform objective as is currently written in the ocean plan. So for enterococcus, we have that 6-week rolling geometric mean and a statistical threshold value, and that's calculated in a static manner every calendar month. We have the colony forming unit and the 32 per 1,000
primary contact respirators. For fecal coliform, because it's getting retained as was currently written in the ocean plan, we don't have all of those elements right now. We have the 30-day geometric mean and the single sample maximum. And there's I guess, yeah, that's all. So we realize there's a few inconsistencies here between what the calculations between enterococcus and fecal coliform, and we are doing a triennial review at the statewide level and kind of updating the fecal coliform objective to be in line with some of these other metrics is a project that will be on the triennial review. All right, so why did we retain the fecal coliform? Well, certainly before the previous adoption date, it came to light that there are several California-specific studies that provided data that says that fecal coliform is a better indicator of gastrointestinal illness during certain water exposures and environmental conditions. Now, this isn't to say that enterococcus is not a good indicator. Enterococcus is a good indicator, and if you had to choose one, we would probably choose enterococcus, but there's certain circumstances is that a fecal coliform catches instances of illness that enterococcus doesn't. And when we were going through the studies, it also came to light that the U.S. EPA 2012 criteria for which the water quality objectives were initially based didn't really fully consider fecal coliform in their criteria. So the study for which they were based didn't test for fecal coliform because its previous iteration has already kind of discounted that as an indicator. And this probably makes sense on this big, broad national level because they're looking at the whole U.S. And they're trying to decide what's the most efficient and effective indicator for this big national basis. However, because we're in California, we're focusing specifically on California, it makes sense for us to retain fecal coliform because of this very California-specific information. All right, and so going forward to E. coli and enterococcus and how that can be calculated. So both of them are going to be calculated on this 6-week rolling basis. And so after you get 6 weeks of data, you're going to get your first calculation. And then going forward, you'll drop off the oldest week and add the newest week. So you get a new calculation for weeks 2 to 7. And again, dropping off that old week of data, adding the new. So you have this calculation that kind of rolls forward in time. Now, for the statistical threshold value, it's calculated in a single calendar month. And it is based on a discrete data set within that month. So the STD is calculated within that 30-day period, that calendar month period. And when a new 30-day period comes around, a whole different discrete data set is used for that calculation. And again, as it goes forward, it's that discrete data set instead of using any of the data from previous calculation periods. All right. And so for fecal coliform, since it's based on that since it's getting retained, and it's based on what we currently have on the ocean plan, it's calculated within that 30-day period based on the 5 most recent samples. And it doesn't specify rolling or static, and we've heard from different entities that they're calculated in various ways. And so we're not specifying right now. So if you calculate it in a rolling manner, it's based on those 5 most recent samples within the past 30 days. So you'll get one calculation with 30 days. And as you go forward, the oldest sample is dropped off and your newest sample is added within that 30-day time period. And so again, you drop the oldest sample, add a new one, and so it kind of rolls forward in time. And for the static again, it's just going to be based on the 5 most recent samples within that 30-day time period. And when you move over to the next 30 days, again, using the discrete data set of the 5 most recent samples within your next 30-day time period.
For the single sample maximum, it's a bit more of a simple calculation. There's a certain threshold that you cannot exceed. And if you do exceed that, that's counted kind of as a violation and exceeded. And so for facial call form, that threshold is set at 400 per 100 milliliters, which is represented by the kind of orangey red line there. And if you have a sample, such as this one that I've highlighted here, that would count as exceeded. But if your sample represented by those little blue dots is under your threshold, then you're meeting the objective. Okay, and I did add a slide on statistical threshold value because we had a lot of questions on this during last week's webinar. And so if you're calculating the statistical threshold value, and again, you have these blue dots that represent all of your samples, then not more than 10% of the samples can exceed that threshold. So if it's set at 110, represented by that red line again, and you have a really great sampling entity that is sampling every day for 30 days, then 3 of those samples can exceed that threshold, and if you have 3 samples that exceed that threshold, then it is 10% of the time it hasn't been exceeded, and that's bad if you get a little exceeded against you. However, say you're sampling for that 30 days and you only have 2 samples that is over that threshold, then it's only 7% of the time those samples have exceeded, and so then you're all right, and you don't get an exceeding mark against you. So, yeah, and again, I just want to emphasize that we do recognize that there's some inconsistencies between these calculations, and we recognize that and are working on it. As for effects on the basin plan, except for site-specific objectives, the proposed revisions supersede numeric water quality objectives currently in basin plan, but do not supersede the narrative water quality objective. Okay, so just to check in really quickly, we've gone through the purpose, the illness rate, the objectives, and the effects on the basin plan. And going forward, I'll talk a little bit about that LREC 1, beneficial use, implementation provisions, water quality standards variance, and the impact on other programs and regulations. All right, so limited water contact recreation. This is only applicable to the Isweeby waters, so that is inland waters. And it's uses of water that support limited recreational activities involving body contact with water, where activities are predominantly limited by physical conditions. And body contact with water and ingestion of water is infrequent or insignificant. And I put this photo up here as kind of an example of something that could be designated as an LREC water. As you can see, it's really shallow, so that kind of limits the body contact or ingestion of water. And it's also in this channel, and it has this fence, and so it makes it a lot harder to get into. However, every water body is very different, and so just because there's a fence doesn't mean that it's going to be an LREC water, or just because it's really shallow doesn't mean that it has that designation. And it's simply an option for the regional boards to use if they think that it would be valuable. And it provides value at this statewide level because then there is consistency in the definition. The provisions also have optional implementation provisions included. And so these include a reference system or anti-degradation approach, natural sources exclusion approach, high flow suspension or seasonal suspension of REC 1 beneficial uses for Isweeby waters. And again, they're not requirements, they're options for implementation. It also describes the water quality standards variance identified in the federal regulatory framework. And this can be used for any pollutants, but it's just identified, again, as an option for bacteria. It describes the requirements of a federal rule, which includes discharge-specific variances, water body-specific variances, and it doesn't add or limit the rule, and is also subject to a public participation requirement, and is not effective until approved by US EPA. And again, this explains the process that's already available under existing law.
As for impacts on Title 17 and the AB 411 beach notification levels, there's no change here. This is a Department of Public Health regulation and not a water board regulation, so we just don't have the authority to change this. And thus, agencies regulated under Title 17 will continue to sample and report on total call form, fecal call form, and intercom. And the data collected will continue to be used to support the 3D listed as the next line of evidence for a way. As for impacts on the 303D listed waters or bacteria impairment, they are subject to reevaluation under the normal integrated report cycle. But based on an internal review by the Water Board, we don't see any significant change in the delisting. As for TMDLs, the proposed bacteria objectives will not supersede an existing TMDL. However, the regional boards may evaluate the effectiveness of TMDL in attaining best beneficial use as a regional scenario. All right, so moving forward, again, we had those documents released on July 6th, and on August 7th, we will be taking this to the board. All right, and you can find all those documents on the Water Board website under the link there, and please feel free to ask any questions of myself, Karen, or Lori. And with that, we'll take any questions, and I do want to know that Lori Weber is on the phone, and she's a good resource too, and might be able to help me out. Questions, anyone?
Great, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so anyone in the room, if you unmute your mic first before you want to talk, it'll turn green, and then go ahead. Is that one, Jason?
Yeah. I have a question about the interpretation of using a variance in the context of an MS4 permit. We've had discussions about the original inclusion of that in the federal rule was more applicable to NPDES permits in terms of point source discharges rather than something that would, involve watershed management plans and large scale kind of things. And also the fact that we would, the way that I've interpreted it is a very strictly time delineated kind of excuse to, not meet an objective in particular water quality, in a water body. And so the question is this even going to work in terms of water bodies that are receiving discharges from MS4 permits? Will it apply to an MS4 as an NPDES permit in that way that I think that it may have been intended by federal rule? I don't know. I mean,
so a water quality standard variance is a limited time period, kind of allowance to let a entity get to a place where they can address those water quality standards. But I'm not totally familiar with the permitting process, so Lori, do you have any insight here? Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks, Lark. Ken, I didn't hear the question very well. I think what I heard was, does the variance policy apply to MS4 permits? Is that correct?
Yes. In terms of how would you write it? How would you write that variance and apply it to an MS4 permit?
That's something that level of detail is not in the staff report. Is the question how to apply it or how does it apply? I guess is the question, because it's part of a legal question.
I talked with their MS4 person yesterday about this, and it's kind of a fuzzy distinction between a watershed management plan where they give themselves, where the responsible party would give themselves timelines to, implement BMPs in the expectation that at the end of however many years they will have met the objective. Whereas a variance would be more like, okay, you have 2 years to figure out whatever it is you're going to figure out. And at the end of that period of time, if you don't,
Yeah, I think that's an implementation question that, kind of the nuts and bolts of implementation that we'd have to work out with you. Are you at the water boards or do you represent the MS board? Okay.
I'm talking in context of Newport Bay and also the revision of our MS4 permit. That's kind of coinciding with reevaluating the TMDL for Newport Bay. And if a variance would be an option in the new MS4 permit, or would it apply to the new MS4 permit? So that's
I think we'd have to have, that's like a detailed implementation discussion that I'd like to have with you offline, and probably pull in our legal staff.
Right, and that's where it is.
It's a little too detailed for like the staff report and the actual objectives, but happy to talk with you offline about that.
Okay, I would appreciate that. I could get our permitting person too on the line, and so that would be good.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. If you wanted to just kind of contact me offline, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'm more email and phone number is just up there.
Yeah, my phone number is up there. Email.
I have a question. This is Jennifer with Humboldt Baykeeper. Are you planning on having a carve out for Region 1 since our basin plan is more protective than what you're proposing?
Yeah, so the current proposal is, I'm not sure what you mean by carve out, but the current proposal is Region 1 has a fecal coliform objective that we will be superseding, but we'll be superseding the numeric objective, but not the narrative objective.
Right, so now you're going to be allowing 2 times as many illnesses as what we currently allow. I don't understand how you can justify superseding that.
The justification is that the numeric objective was based on protection of high quality water and not tied to recreational beneficial uses. We want to have a statewide consistency on Rec 1, protection of recreational beneficial uses. You do have a narrative objective in Region 1, which would allow you to actually set an even lower number and high quality waters that you want to protect. There's also, an anti-degradation policy that wouldn't allow. So we wouldn't allow any, kind of degradation in water quality.
All right. Well, we already have the 2 of the top 10 most polluted beaches in the state, so they're already pretty degraded. So my understanding.
Yeah. So are they impaired? Are those beaches impaired?
Yes, they are.
If they may be subject to a TMDL.
So my understanding is Lake Tahoe has a carve out. Is that going to still stand, the Tahoe region?
Tahoe region has a numeric objective for fecal coliform that we are not superseding because it is not tied to the Rec 1. It's not tied to Rec 1 beneficial uses.
What's it tied to?
It's tied to nothing. I mean, their basin plan does not specifically link their objectives to beneficial uses, which is kind of interesting for most other basin plans do.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And are you, I'm happy to talk about this in a little more detail if you want to, if you have any more detailed questions, please give me a call.
Yeah, well, the California Coastkeeper Alliance submitted comments about a year ago on all of this, and I was hoping that you had changed your mind based on our comments.
My understanding, based on my read of the response to comments, we have responded to those, so I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to kind of read through the response to comments, and then if you have any more questions, give me a call.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
This is Karen Black. So we appreciate those questions, and perhaps you could email them to Lark and or Lori, because we'd love to address them, but we also want to move forward with the agenda so that we don't run over the time. So appreciate that.
Thank you, everyone. And yeah, please feel free to reach out if you do have questions.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move to the next presentation on the Safe to Swim portal development.
introduce this?
Okay. So Michelle, we have transferred our sharing capabilities to you. Michelle is calling in remotely from Sacramento. She's going to give an update on the map development that she's been working really hard on to get the inland water quality information up onto the portal. And hopefully we will be putting the water quality information on the same portal. Michelle, are you there?
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see your screen. Take it away, Michelle. Thanks.
Okay, great. Let me just refresh this real quick. Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Michelle Tang. I work at the State Water Board with the SWAMP unit in the Office of Information Management and Analysis. And I'm just going to quickly present a project that I've been working on. It's not final yet. It's very much still in the development phases. And right now we're just trying to develop kind of a proof of concept type of thing and trying to create very robust data linkages so that we can, create these type of applications in their final form. So this project is, I started developing it it was intended as an update to the long-term bacteria trends map that is currently on the Safe to Swim portal. And so it's the idea that it's an update to that map, and depending on what we can do, we can add more features and make it a more immersive and more interactive experience. Right now you see the state of California, and it's currently pulling in all of the monitoring sites from the CEDIN database, for which we have E. coli data, Enterococcus, total coliform, and fecal coliform data. And it's displaying those sites right now based on the last sample date that we were able to pull. So the color scheme that you see right now, all the blue sites, the last sample date was older than a year. Green, which you kind of see down here, is within the last year, and yellow, which you see kind of in the Santa Cruz area, within the last month. Just a kind of a note right here, what you see isn't entirely accurate just because we're working right now on getting the full data set through these API linkages that we're making. So what you see on this map, it doesn't include the full data set, and so that may be why a lot of these sites aren't showing up as yellow or green. So just keep that in mind, please. So the idea is that this map, when you scroll in and you click on a site, it will pull all of the CEDIN data once everything is final and show basically the data trends at that site. So I've went ahead and picked the site here in Santa Cruz, and based on this data set that I'm working with right now, I'm using for development, it's pulled what you can see, the Enterococcus data, and it's graphed it along with the statewide objective kind of values that Lark went over earlier. So you have the SCV value right here for Enterococcus, 110, and you also have the geomean right here, 30. Based on Lark's presentation, I may need to make some changes, but right now, because this is just a proof of concept, it's kind of very general, just trying to get the bones in right now. But the idea is that all of the blue dots represent the results that we're able to pull from CEDIN, and this application itself then takes those points and calculates the 6-week rolling geomean, and which you can see right here with the red points. And so it gives you kind of this visual tool to kind of compare it to those statewide objectives that were presented on earlier. And then you can switch the analyte here, so it graphs total coliform, fecal coliform, and if it has E. coli data, it would also show up here. And there are different interactive features. You can use this kind of timeline down here to look maybe at a specific date range that you're interested in. So it kind of, before you have the big picture overview, but now you can kind of zoom in and look at kind of a specific date range and see how it all matches up. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. It's really just kind of showing these long-term trends based on the CEDN data that we have right now. The goal is to kind of, hopefully we can add in data from other databases and also ensure that we have a really robust data connection, because right now, this is a pretty big data set that I'm working with, about 1.5 million records, and it will probably grow very quickly too. So right now I'm doing a lot of work on just ensuring that we get these strong data connections that are fast too. But I wanted to give an update just based on what I've been working on and how things are going, and also get any feedback if anybody in the work group has any comments. So yeah, that's all I have to present. Does anybody have any questions?
We have one question.
Sure.
I'm curious, is this website already accessible by public?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Is this website accessible by the public?
Currently, it is not accessible by the public. It's in development right now, and I did put out before, so I've presented this at other meetings, and I did put out a publicly accessible link, but right now it's not working just because before we make it any more public, we want to fix those data linkages that we're missing. So it's not public yet. Hopefully we can put out a draft soon.
We have another question?
Thanks, Eric. Hey, what's the status? You said, she mentioned this is tied to CEDN. What's the status of CEDN's timeliness for getting data available to a portal like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am not sure with the details, and I think it's probably very different depending on like the region and the program. But in general, I think for me, just working with kind of the data portal API, which is pulling that CEDN data, I'm seeing sample dates as recent as this month. It might not be showing, or within actually this past week, but it might not be showing now. Just due to kind of the draft phase of this. But I don't know. Does that answer your question, or?
Michelle?
Yeah.
Now, how frequently would once it's live, how frequently would it be refreshed?
Okay. Yeah. So right now, the data that this map is pulling from is coming from the open data portal, data.ca.gov. So we have a script that pulls from CEDN, and which we run manually. And right now we're running it about monthly. That could change in the future, but right now it's monthly.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. Do we have any other questions for Michelle? Okay, we're going to turn it over to Rafa for the next visualization presentation.
So the question about is this public available? Well, the data is publicly available. Building the visualization with that, once you have the tools, you can actually do it yourself. Yeah, I'm going to use this computer. I'm going to try to show you actually on the internet. Well, I'm working with Office of Information Management Analysis. We just got approved last week a resolution by the State Water Board on open data, which is really the intention is that all the data sets that we have at the Water Board, we're going to make them publicly available, with the caveat that in some cases we may need to protect some information because it's privileged information, but the intention is that all the data sets that we have at the Water Board will be made available to the public, making sure that there's some protocols for data sharing and that there's data quality, and then we also want to make sure that we are part of a data management strategy, which is not just the data set available to the public, but we need to start from the way we collect the information, the monitoring programs, the way we store it, and we do the quality control, the way we make the data available to the public, and then the way we analyze and communicate information. So what I want to do today is to show you what I've been able to do with the Beachwatch data. I've been working with Beachwatch since 2005, and even before that. And it's been very hard for me to actually communicate information. What does this mean, and how do we actually put it together? Last January, we finally were able to produce a flat file from Beachwatch that is a structured data that ideally we would be sharing this with the public, and that allow us to do a lot of the analysis that we've been trying to do, which is to answer four questions. The first question is how frequently are we monitoring beaches? What are the results of those monitoring? What are the posts and closures, basically the beach advisories, and how available the beaches are for the public to use? And I think I can answer those four questions today based on the Beachwatch data. So I'm going to go to, I'm using, the technology has changed so much in the last couple of years and allow us to do analysis of very large data sets very quickly. And I'm using Tableau. I can use Power BI and Visual is using Shiny and other tools, but I'm using Tableau to actually to visualize the data. And I'm just going to go.
And Rafa, I'm not sure if you already mentioned this, but is this data set kind of a snapshot in time that you're going to be showing us, but eventually it will be kind of updated all the time?
Correct. So this is something we pulled in January, so the data for 2008 is not complete. But ideally, it will be connected to the Beachwatch directly, and we should be able to produce information on a regular basis. So I do this for a living, so I have more than 178 visualizations that for all water portfolios, from inspection to permits to drinking water. But Beachwatch is actually very interesting for me. So the first thing I want to show you is I can find it. So this is how frequently are we monitoring Here, in this case, what I have is a map of all the beaches in the state. And you can look at the information by beach, by station. So when you click on a beach, for example, it will show you in the map next to it just the stations for that particular beach. And here I'm showing the monthly geometric mean for total polyforms and the number of sampling events for that particular beach for each year by month. But if I click on a particular station, it will just give me the data for that individual station. And I can actually go and be even more detailed to show the data by month or by day. Beauty of it is I can actually click on this and select this period of time, and it will just it will grab that data. The other feature that is very interesting in Tableau is that you can just go here and you can download the data. You just click here, and here's the data that I used to do visualization. This is the entire data set. This is what we like these tools because it's part of the open data strategy. It's not just here's a very nice graph. No, here's the data that I use for this visualization. And if you want to do it yourself, you can do your own analysis with the data. But it's not just the data and the information, it's also like the tools available to do it yourself. The other one I want to show you is something I put together yesterday. So I had some bacteria data, but what I was curious about is what can I do with this data set in a very short period of time. So I said, well, let's just focus on posts and closures because it's a simple data set. I mean, tracking, advisories should be pretty straightforward. So, and I did this yesterday in less than an hour. Before it was completely unthinkable. So here's a map of all, sorry, I had to go back and forth. But here these are all the beaches in Orange County. I can go and select all the beaches, and the map will be just spread, it will be a much larger map, okay? Or I can just filter by particular beach, by particular county. And then within the county, I can just focus on one particular beach. And when I go there, I just, hover over, it shows the number of advisories that they have and the number of days that the beach was actually closed or posted. That's a very quick way of looking at the data. But if you want to do analysis on trends, you can actually just look at by beach. You can have the numbers in there. And again, you can go click on a particular beach, and you will just filter the information for that beach. There's a lot of things you can do with it. There's a lot of tools. You can produce a list of all the data. So if you want to work with the data yourself, question?
This is amazing, wonderful design. Can you do analysis between variables?
Yes. You can do correlations. You can do data integration, which means like I have a single spill data set, so I can correlate single spills with actually advisories, so I can see how what the impacts are. I can do resilience.
You can do water quality modeled against the.
I can do water quality.
Yeah, against illness rates, and you could actually model how many illnesses.
The only thing I want to show is like the beach business with lifeguard data and correlate each and beach closures. So this is what we call about data integration. It's no longer one single database. So we bring in data from multiple sources and we bring it all together and try to make sense out of it. We just do it. And I did it just in I mean, I think the technology is there now to provide this information. Now, I did another one here, and I did it by beach, by county, and you can really do your own filter because you can understand that a regional board just focus on the whole region. They don't want to, they're not interested in what's happening in the rest of the state. For me, to work with the state board, I want to do something that includes all the data. So here's more detail of that graph I showed before. And I think it's by quarter, but then you can even go farther and do it by day. Okay. So it's a lot of, ideally, my vision is I should be able to do a calendar where you have good days and bad days and can actually show on that particular beach, this is the historical trend. On this day, on August 15th, typically it's safe to swim in this beach because we don't have beach closures. Something similar to what Michelle has done is looking at the actual water quality and the bacteria. Sorry. To rearrange it, and it's the computer thing. This one is very large. So basically, this is all the data we have in BeachWatch for water quality conditions. And here I actually calculated the geometric mean. But I can, in addition, I can actually filter by how many number of events I'm going to be using. Here's all the beaches in Orange County, in Laguna Beach, all the stations in Laguna Beach, in Orange County. And you can see the data since 1995, 1998. You can see how the lines are the geometric means, and the dots are just the values, the analysis. And see how it was like, when I saw this to the program, they say, what's happening here? It's like a before and after. Something happened here, immediately you can see it. It's like it was a different method of this. It's consistent. It's not a consistent data set, but it seems like it was a different place. Well, you can do this now and find these anomalies in data just by looking at this way. And you can, the way this works, you can click on any of these stations, and it will just give you the data for that station. Okay? So it simplifies. So that station we are only monitoring for entropy, and this is what the data looks like. It's a logarithmic scale. That was will be completely off the chart. You can change your time period. You can look at watch all the data to see what it looks like, and you can see the overall trends. As I said before, you can use here. You can just go and click and download the data, and you can just download the data yourself. But to the question is this available to the public? Well, it is, but it's not. I mean, we don't have a link to it, but it is discoverable. I mean, we're using this internally. We're still testing the way we want to communicate information, so we are happy to receive comments and suggestions on how to improve, make it more meaningful and more useful.
There's so much information out there. It's how do you make it useful? Exactly. So we have the tools. We just need to work with Rafi and make sure that we get the right stuff on our website.
Thanks. We're big fans of the data visualization tools. I'm super excited to have this capability. The one thing we're looking at the trends there that reminded me of is our integrated report cycle. As you know, extraordinarily time intensive to try to get the data, particularly for something like beach data, analyzed and through the integrated report. Do you foresee an automated tool like this being able to be used, being relied on by the state board staff instead of having to go through Calwaka nightmare?
Yes, I'm working on that. Some projects, like trying to get, as I say, we have 178 visualizations already built up, and I'm working with the Calwaka data to actually.
Awesome. So Jeremy, that's a great question. Aaron Black. Oh, hold on, that's Lori. I just wanted to give an update kind of also since that's on the part of the agenda we're at. So currently I'm working to get the information for Beach Watch data that's existing, so 2013 to 2017, to make it compatible with CDIN, because the state board is working on the integrated report, which is why I think Lori was speaking up. Needs to be compatible so that we can use an R script that we have to use it for the lines of evidence. And then for the future, I'm working to make Beach Watch data be compatible as it's entered into Beach Watch so that that script can be used from CDIN data, and Beach Watch data is automatically uploaded to CDIN, so we're working on getting those columns of data available to make that easier. Was that Lori on the phone that was trying to make a comment?
This is Megan chiming in.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. It was breaking up a little bit.
This is Megan Brousseau with Waterkeeper.
Oh, hi, Megan. Thanks for chiming in.
Hi there.
We were running a little late, okay?
No worries. I'll just listen in.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so hopefully Jeremy.
Hey, this is Lori Weber. I was going to respond to the comment about trying to analyze bacteria data in Calwaka. It's kind of add on to what Karen said. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Karen's right. What we're trying to do is what we plan to do is, reformat the Beach Watch data and, kind of a seeding format or seeding compatible format, and then use this, our automated tool called RELIP, which is an R-based program that, kind of will analyze the bacteria data and count up the number of exceedances based on the new objective. So it should be, we're looking at a much more automated process than formerly was used for bacteria data, using the Kalwaka approach. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure which region you were from, but does that answer the question?
Thanks, Lori. This is Jeremy from Region 9. That does answer my question, but I also want to make the point that the visualization like Rafa showed really helps show why maybe historical data should be superseded by the more recent analysis of the trends, especially after the Clean Beach Initiative and whatnot. We found that a lot of the beaches we could delist if it was easier to rely more on the obvious recent trends instead of the historical data. So it sounds like you guys are making a great step in the right direction, and maybe our staff will just have to kind of fine-tune and polish towards the end. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great, and definitely a kind of an interactive geographical interface, kind of what Rafa has or what Michelle showed. We'd like to get that up and running as well. And if you have any more questions or comments or suggestions, just let me know.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Rafa.
Sure.
So take a look at our agenda. We have some updates happening. We saw some great stuff. We also need some data. Traditionally, we've been monitoring coastlines, inland data. I know some of you guys have it. You need to share with it. That's not going to get to us through Beach Watch. That's going in through Stephen. And with that, I want to introduce our next topic. It's the new inland water sample collection SOP support. Safe to swim. Our presenter is Alicia Wenzel. She's with the Central Valley Water Quality Control.
I can keep it pretty short because I know we're behind schedule. So I think the draft SOP has been posted on the work group website.
Yes.
So that's one of the products we've been working on. Our inland group our initial goals are one, to get our inland data on the portal. So we're still working on that. It's getting closer. It's very exciting. And then, of course, to try to kind of standardize how we're collecting the samples. So we do have that draft SOP. It kind of covers both what we call ambient sampling, more overall condition of a river or stream, as well as trying to collect a sample that's more representative of a swimming area, beach area. It is kind of a different approach to how you collect the sample. The SOP is currently, we're in a review process with the Swamp IQ team, so that's our quality assurance folks. Marissa's on the phone. But if you're interested, you can take a look at that and be interested to hear if there are comments or different approaches out there.
And I understand that you're giving a presentation very soon.
Yes, that's right too. Also next Thursday, as part of the Water Board Brown Bag webinar series, I will be giving a short presentation on the inland monitoring that we've been doing in the Central Valley region last decade, and including kind of focusing on our current work in the American River, kind of in downtown Sacramento, where we have elevated E. coli issues, and what we're doing to try to get the information out there.
Thank you. That webinar was announced through various listservs. Didn't receive it, sign up. You get all of our announcements. You can find that online if you go to the SWAMP, the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program's webpage, and it'll be listed under webinars.
You can contact me. I usually, if you just Google Central Valley Swamp, our website pops up and my contact information is on there.
Thank you for that swift update. Speaking of another swift one, Ken, what's happening with the Bite 2018?
So, for what it's worth, Bite 18 is now underway. If you remember, there's multiple elements to Bite. There's a part that's sediment quality, there's a part that's ocean acidification, there's another part that's harmful algal interested in, which is the shoreline water quality.
Yes.
So that's the only one that hasn't started yet. So, to put it in context, the question that the BIKE program was trying to answer in 2018 was, over here next to a microphone.
Oh, I'm over here.
Oh, okay, great. The question we were trying to answer with the BIKE 18 shoreline microbiology was compare the results and frequency of exceedance for Enterococcus at marine beaches, kind of routinely monitored marine beaches, to the potential for new criteria from EPA on colophage. And so it was a relatively straightforward kind of monitoring design. We're just going to measure both things at the same beaches multiple times, you know, over an entire summer, and then again during the wet season to see how it plays out during both weather types. The challenge is EPA hasn't produced its final protocols for colophage yet. And so there's no sense in us getting started until they've decided how they want colophage measured. Because we measure it the wrong way, then there's any results we come up with won't be necessarily valid. So we're pretty much just waiting for EPA to figure out how they want to measure colophage. And then the regional monitoring will move forward.
All right, so I'll put you on the list for the November potentially work group presentation whenever you have some updates.
I was going to say you're putting a lot of confidence in EPA.
Yeah. Well, TBD until we have something for you.
Yeah, so, I'll be glad to present on the other elements of BIKE, but I figured this is one you guys care about.
Yeah, and I think at the August meeting, we have a trash. Another one of the BIKE elements is going to be presented anyway, so if you come to the August meeting, you'll get another one.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is presentation, Watershed Monitoring and Management Programs Partnering for Point-in-Time Counts. Our presenter is Megan Brousseau with the Inland Empire Waterkeeper, who is going to be with us this morning, but came up. She is remote.
Can you take cards?
Okay, we have the PowerPoint up. Just let me know when you want to advance slides. If you'd like to the program, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm pulling into a regional park so I can support our park system while I'm presenting to you all. So I had to pay my entry fee like a good citizen. So good morning. Thank you for letting me call in remotely. My name's Megan Brousseau. I'm the Associate Director of Inland Empire Waterkeeper. And I'll be really brief on our descriptions, but I wanted to just give those in the room an idea of who we are in case you're not familiar with us. So we're a environmental nonprofit. We're part of the California Coastkeeper Alliance and the National Waterkeeper Alliance. The president of our National Waterkeeper Alliance is Bobby Kennedy Jr. I always make sure to lead with that so that people can understand kind of the framework of where we lead from, and that is from the legacy of community service that the Kennedys have instilled in our organization. So we have 5 pillars that is education, advocacy, research, restoration, and enforcement. What education looks like for us is, and if you can advance to that education slide, we try to educate the public holistically and do a comprehensive program that will reach all ages, all socioeconomic groups within, the region that we serve, which is millions of water users. And so some of our leading programs are our River Cats program. That's kid activism through science. And that is where we take Title I schools on completely free field trips. And they do water quality testing at the river. They visit treatment facilities. They learn what a watershed is, what their watershed is, and their place in it. And they're empowered to become stewards of that watershed. We also have a very unique and extremely impactful program called River Camp, where we take children and we put them in the Santa Ana River for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week during summer. And we do 3 weeks of that. It has grown every year as people begin to spread the word that we have this amazing resource in the Santa Ana River and that it's safe and swimmable. And so for every kid that pays to go to that program, a child goes for free. And what that does is really bridge the gap and use water and nature as the great equalizer between some of these socioeconomic and geographical barriers out in the Inland Empire. And finally, we do have Little Seedlings Nature Preschool, where we're creating water stewards from the ground up, quite literally. Another pillar that is extremely important and has a nexus to this group today is our research and restoration. And so we have a stream team of what we term citizen scientists. However, most of these are graduate students or recent graduates, mostly environmental sciences, geology, and biology majors. And what we do is test for E. coli and fecal coliform and all nutrients in multiple places of the Middle Santa Ana River and Lytle Creek and other bodies as needed. And so with that, we kind of create a checks and balances with the existing testing programs that are going on, for example, with TMDL Task Force, on which we sit on all of the TMDL Task Force in the region. But it gives us a second database, an independent base. And when there are spikes or reasons for concern, we will then, in addition to using our in-house lab, send those samples out to state certified labs. So sometimes our students release a white paper quarterly, sometimes it's yearly. It depends on who we have on tap, but what we always have is a solid body of data, and it's going back over 4 years now. So that's something that I think is extremely important, not only because we use this on our Swim Guide app to let folks know, the water quality in real time, issues in real time, but it helps us keep the powers that be accountable. It helps us be able to lead folks where they should be recreating and where they should not be recreating, and it helps us to zero in on non-source point pollution issues. So after that, the next slide should be advocacy. Well, I'm sorry, I'm skipping Crest to Coast. So part of that research and restoration, Stream Team is our research, but with restoration, we lead community cleanups and also corporate cleanups where businesses can come out and use it as a team building opportunity. And we clean trash out of the Santa Ana River and its tributaries. To date, we have removed over 106,000 pounds in the last 4 years from these tributaries in the middle of Santa Ana. But we're not just removing trash. Because of the great support from Eric Burez, really, and the state board, we've created an organization that's armed with rapid trash assessment and other programs that will allow us to not just clean up the trash, but to go in before every cleanup and inventory the trash. We know down to the brand name what trash is there. We know redeposit rates and times. And what this gives us is an educated trajectory to try to systemically fix the pollution issue. And what that looks like and means to us in the real world is that if we have, for example, 3 sites that we're cleaning up, and one is in San Bernardino in the main stem, and another is in Mill Creek, which is fed by Rancho Cucamonga, and one is in the main stem in Riverside. We're seeing very different types of trash there, and we can look at the data that's created by the rapid trash assessment to hone in on what the problem is. And so, for example, in Mill Creek, we were able to see that largely this was industry dumping from subcontractors of housing that was going up. And we can then, and also it looked like, it seemed from the data that there was dumping from landscapers and perhaps some citizens that either can't or think they can't afford the dumping rates. Whereas in the main stem of Riverside, we didn't see any of that dumping, illegal dumping really. What we saw was storm drain pollution and recreational pollution. And so because of rapid trash assessment working together with the bacterial and water quality data, we're able to go to decision makers and say, for example, to Rancho Cucamonga, you've got a problem with illegal dumping, and you don't have, in Ontario or Rancho Cucamonga, a great program to let your rate payers know that they can go dump for free once a month, for example. And then over in Riverside, we see that we don't have that issue, and we can attribute that to a 30-year, very well publicized and well-ran program called CURE, Clean Up Riverside's Environment, where they make sure that their ratepayers know when and where and how they can dump for free. So we've been able to use rapid trash assessment and the water quality data to lead municipalities to share with one another, giving that CURE program over to these cities that didn't have it, trying to roll that out to systemically stop the illegal dumping, and at the same time being able to say to a city who's successful in that platform, you're not successful in your storm drains. You're not successful in your recreational trash. And so what can we do here to help you with that? And because of that, it's led us to have bilingual outreach for Leave No Trace at recreational sites, and to work with the city to have bilingual signage, which you'll see in the slide about advocacy. So really, what we're doing is trying to create a very holistic, systemic way to identify these problems and empower and partner with municipalities to fix those issues and to educate their constituencies to be better stewards of the water. So Eric, which slide are you on now?
Advocacy and enforcement.
Okay, great. So with advocacy, that, you know, really what's splashy about advocacy is when I'm standing before a city council until 1 a.m. on Earth Day, trying to get them to recognize that maybe changing a green space, multi-species protected habitat area into high density housing for 1,000+ houses with horses is maybe not the best idea in the middle of Santa Ana. And so you'll see that as advocacy and us fighting sometimes what we see as being really water quality damaging. But it's the flip side, and we do that, but the flip side of advocacy is the very next day after an unfavorable ruling, going in and working with those same city councils to figure out how we can take a situation that might not be the best and make it the best. And getting that same city council to add trash cans and bilingual advocacy and signage and restrooms and things like that to mitigate the increase in recreation and runoff that we're going to see from that, you know, decision that they've made. Advocacy is also everything we do in education. It's really just giving people an understanding of their place in this watershed and the issues, and then empowering them to make the right choices. And finally, enforcement. We do enforce on the Clean Water Act. We test during storm events, and we litigate. Never to embarrass, and we don't keep any of the proceeds. We litigate strictly to try to bring people in compliance and allow those that maybe were the worst actors to become the best practice people, which happens time and time again. We end up giving tours of places that we've previously sued because we've worked together and they are now the industry standard and something to be proud of. So that's what we do. And where we come into your work is mainly with that stream team and this knowledge of what's going on really arose the issue of homelessness and how detrimental, 2/3 of that 100,000 pounds is homeless related. And so we were asked by Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority last year to conduct 2 symposiums. We conducted one, and you can go to that next slide for the homeless and water symposiums. So the first symposium was conducted in June of 2017 in the city of Riverside. And what made this different was the fact that we, from the get-go, advertised and let people know that when you send somebody from your agency or organization or office to this, you're coming knowing that our goal is to show the water sector, not that we can or should, but that we must take responsibility in ending homelessness in the watershed. And as I'm sure all of you are thinking right now, that's a pretty provocative thing sometimes to say to, for example, a regional board or a flood control district or a private water company. And so that was our aim, and we weren't really sure how people would accept that, and we found ourselves with standing room only, and we really had an impactful event. We had people from our regional board. We had people that were homeless living under the A sign in Anaheim. We had ACLU attorneys. We had service providers and homeless shelter directors. And I think that every person left that room more willing to accept the responsibility and with a better understanding of the fact that we don't really have a choice, that we have to accept that responsibility. And so we followed that up in December of 2017 in Fullerton, at the Fullerton Library, in the height of the turmoil in Anaheim and the evictions and what the county was going through. And again, even with all of Southern California on fire, quite literally at that time in December, droves of people came out. And Supervisor Josie Gonzalez came from San Bernardino, the czarina of homelessness in San Bernardino. And she made a very poignant speech from the audience. We didn't even know she would be there. And she conveyed to us that she truly believed, with her 30 years of knowledge and experience in this region with homelessness and water, that the answer to homelessness was in that room with the water sector. And so with that and her support, where you'll see on the next slide that we're going, well, before that, there's Clean Camp Coalition, so we might bounce around a little bit, but I would like to go first to the conference, to that last slide. We will be doing a full-blown 8-hour conference, most likely in October, but the date will be announced very soon. It's going to be in fall, and it will be at Cal State San Bernardino. And our partners are the Water Resources and Policies Initiative Group at Cal State San Bernardino. And we're calling this a conference, but only for lack of a better term. What we're really aiming to do is to create a regional work group, to recognize that we're on the cusp of really great changes in all three counties, San Bernardino, Riverside, and Orange County, with the new hiring in many of these counties of homeless czars, czarinas, point people. We've got regional groups like the Interagency Coalition for Homelessness in San Bernardino that have been working very hard. Everybody is on the cusp of launching these big programs. And so our goal here is to get behind that curve and coordinate everybody's efforts now, and to take what is working and what's launching and share it so that we're not playing whack-a-mole along the river and just pushing problems back and forth. So that's the big broad goal. But if we could flip back one to the Clean Camp Coalition, our organization in particular is taking the lead based on that first symposium. We had a keynote speaker named Chris Brocate. Now, Chris was a rock star volunteer from our brethren up at the Russian River Keeper. And this young man was not a paid staffer. He went out with himself and another volunteer, and he was doing cleanups like ours, where we go out with the Clean Camp, where we go out with Crested Coast and we clean up in sometimes big homeless encampments. And he realized early on what we did not catch on to until we heard him speak. And that was that we needed to, instead of trying to clean up the trash after it's been left behind by an encampment, we should be trying to circumvent the trash from ever being deposited in the river in the first place. And so what he started was a program that I would encourage everybody to Google on your own time and look into it, and that is called the Cleat Camp Alliance. And what he did was start homeless outreach, basically. When he would talk to these fellows and these people experiencing homelessness in his river, they would explain the difficulty in getting their trash out of there, just logistically. And it occurred to him that we all have weekly trash services, and there aren't any for these folks that are living in the river. And so what he started doing was handing out trash bags and saying he would be there Tuesday at 6 to pick up the trash. And it worked. And here I was boasting with my paid team that we had removed 100,000 pounds of trash in 4 years. And he's removed 200,000 pounds of trash in 2 years with volunteers only. And when you see his before and after shots, his befores look like our befores, and his afters look like responsible campers. Now, we were inspired by this program, but we knew that we have very different watersheds. We have very different political climates and geographical issues. And so we will be rolling out the Clean Camp Coalition here in Riverside in 2 weeks. But what we will do slightly differently is that at every single point of contact, we will have resource providers that are ready, willing, and able to take individuals out of the river and place them in homes that moment. And so what this will look like on the ground is a first rollout of outreach. We're going to hand out reusable canvas backpacks that have the information of our program printed on them. And inside those backpacks will be trash bags. And we are doing a pilot program within the Middle Santa Ana River that uses the levee system to avoid very complicated differences that switch back and forth in management and municipalities and governance throughout the Middle Santa Ana. By using the levee system, we only have to be partnered with the flood control district, which we are. So when we go out for initial outreach, we will have providers with us. We will have skilled workers that were formerly homeless and are now working through the City of Riverside's Riverside at Work program. And we will hand out these backpacks with this information that not only says, put it on the levee no earlier than this time, no later than this time on this day, but it also gives resource numbers. And when we hand those out and tell them about our program, we will have a provider ready to take anybody who wants to go seek housing that moment. And when we come back to pick up that trash, every single time we will have providers that are ready to place people that moment. And so it is a pilot program. It is tricky. It has a lot of moving pieces, but we have partners at the County of Riverside Park and Open Space District, the City of Riverside, Rivers and Lands Conservancies, and Flood Control. And we're looking for more partners all the time. And this will be a pilot program, and it goes hand in hand with the fact that we will be doing water quality testing before and after every encampment that is mapped for this program. So we will have water quality data to go along with these outreach and trash collection efforts so that we might be better able to create a picture of what this did and if it was successful in reducing bacterial loads or changing the health of the water and how many folks were placed. And we're hoping that, we're going to do it in 3-month segments, but we're hoping after a good half a year of this that we'll have enough data to guide us to grow the program and bring on more partners and to try to alleviate the homeless issue that way while alleviating the trash issue in the process. So with that, I will ask if there are any questions.
Anybody in the room have any questions for Megan?
And thanks so much, Megan. That was fantastic.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm so sorry. I love to be in a room with you guys when I'm trying to explain these kind of crazy ideas sometimes to some folks, so that you can really understand where I'm coming from. So I hope it comes across that we have done our due diligence. We're in that river on so many levels every day. We're in that river and that riparian forest testing water. We're in that river teaching students. We're in the regional board offices. We're in the city offices. I feel that we have a comprehensive knowledge of our river and the issues. And while homelessness is not in our mission, it is intrinsically involved in water quality right now in Southern California. And so for now, we will step up and take that lead.
Thank you. Yeah, if you could send Eric and myself information on that homeless conference that's going to be in October so we can share it with the listeners for this group, that would be great.
We would love to. We would love to. I would really hope that everybody could commit to sending a decision maker and a worker bee, because that is how this will actually come to fruition. And knowing that when you send that decision maker and worker bee to this one day, you're going to be leaving that day with an important role in this regional work plan for the next year.
Megan, could you touch
Yes.
upon the point time count? That's usually in January, is that correct?
What was that? I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Point in time count.
For some reason, you're breaking up a little bit.
Point in time count?
The point in
Yes,
time
so
count?
the point in time count. So that was in December, I believe, this last time. And there's a reason for that. So that the point in time count is done in December because it's a national movement, and in most geographical locations, it's so cold that folks are seeking shelter, and it's easier for them to count them. So for the point in time count, I really feel that it is imperative for groups like ours, for water agencies, to get involved in leading work groups for the point in time count. The point in time count needs to look different in this region and in Southern California than it does nationally. December is probably not the best time to really get a good grip on how many folks are out there. But because of our river and our tributaries being so remote, groups like ours are the only ones that can lead these folks down in there to get a good count. So we did participate this last December, and it was a great experience. But what it really showed us is that it's a great program, but for what we're talking about in this river, it's woefully flawed. There is no way from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. in 3 hours to gauge how many homeless are in even a 1 mile stretch of the middle Santa Ana. We went down with our group and we brought law enforcement and point in time people with us, and we could see visually 50 camps, and we got to maybe 13. And when when it hits 10 o'clock, you're instructed to go on back. And so I understand the constraints of the point in time count, but I feel like it needs to be different for us in this region, and it needs to be longer and a more intense on-foot effort.
Megan, this is Jen with Humboldt Baykeeper. I have a quick question. How many staff people do you have working on this, like the actual implementation of the project?
For Clean Camp Coalition, we've got 2 paid staffers, myself and my programs director. We have 2 paid interns from the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority's partnership program with the Cal State system. So there's those 4. And then we have a partner at Rivers and Lands Conservancy, has a staffer on this project with us, which brings it to 5. And then we will have probably 2 employees from the City of Riverside's Riverside at Work program to help implement it, and then a resource provider. So you've got about 7 people that need to really be there to roll it out, plus a resource provider to be there in case anybody is accepting of help.
Okay, thanks. Really
And it should be noted too that we're also working with researchers from Cal State Fullerton and Cal State San Bernardino who will be conducting listening sessions with us this first round when we go out for outreach, so that they can be getting also some feedback from those experiencing homelessness on what water issues may have led to their displacement.
If you're online, unmute yourself and ask a question.
What was that?
Just if anyone's online and they want to unmute them.
Okay.
Ask a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Megan. I think this was wonderful.
Absolutely. And I want to say as I leave you that I am fully cognizant of the fact that what I just laid before you all is a big bite. And some of it can seem either controversial or too difficult for some agencies and governmental in particular to deal with. And so if you have questions that maybe you don't want to put out right now here, please feel free to call me. You can call me, you can email me, and we can speak very frankly offline about the uncomfortable, not easy aspects of this and where you can still be impactful within the realm of what you're able to do within your organization. So I would just encourage you to think about this, think about the questions that are not so comfortable, and reach out to me with them anyway.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you so much for having me.
We look forward to your next conference.
Wonderful. I hope to see you all there. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Great. So now we're at the 10th agenda items. I think we're actually really good on time, even though we started a little bit late because of some technical difficulties. So Eric's going to talk about outreach and enrichment. And so the first thing that's up on that agenda item is the National Water Quality Monitoring Conference. So in case you were all interested in attending and you didn't know when it was, are you going to go over it?
Yeah, that's not the first thing out.
Okay. See you later.
One of the things that are really important to us is keeping up to date, being knowledgeable, sharing about our programs, learning about what's happening in watersheds next to ours or one from the part of the state. One of the ways to tackle this, trying to get that information shared, is through our webinars and also through having a curated playlist of recorded webinars. Through the California Water Quality Monitoring Collaboration Network, another working group with the council, I hosted the Swimmable California webinar series. It ran from September to April. We have had previous webinars on safe to swim topics. Eping's been a presenter, Alicia's been a presenter. All of those are online. They've all been archived and they're in different playlists. We had such great success with this. The feedback was fantastic. What are we missing? What will be the next set of topics? So we'd like to continue hosting these webinars, but me sitting in LA, I just have one little guy's perspective. Need help from you guys to understand what topics are important, what type of technology you'd like to hear about, programs you'd like to talk about. Jeremy had 3 presentations he could give us, right? He was about ready to get them to us. Yeah. He took off he didn't want to hear me volunteer him. Don't worry, we will get him. But anyhow, so why am I up here? So what are your needs? What are you interested in? Technology, methods, projects, special studies. Would you like to speak and present about a project, or do you know of somebody, wow, I'd really like to hear what they did? What are they working on? Like with Megan's presentation, or any of the other presentations we had earlier with data visualization. We could even put together an enrichment committee. Somebody that really likes to tackle education, hey, let me know. Let Karen know, let Alicia know. We're here to help everybody in the state achieve its swimmable California. And we've been using the word swimmable a lot, but it's about water contact. It's not just about recreation. There's more to it than that. Those are elements that need to go into the charter as well. So we're trying to expand things. Next, this is what Karen was talking about. The National Water Quality Monitoring Council, they're off schedule. Usually would have had their conference this year. It's happening next year, March 25th to 29th in Denver. They have had a conference in Denver previously. It's a great place to have a conference. The last one was fantastic. Right now, they are welcoming proposals for 15-minute oral presentations, posters, and then 90-minute extended sessions. Those would also include workshops, panel discussions, and facilitated roundtables. Due date for proposals is fast approaching. It's August 15th. In the past, I have given 15-minute oral presentations, posters, and I ran a series of workshops. I think I did 3, maybe 4 years worth of workshops. If you would like to put together a 90-minute extended session about your Safe to Swim, California Safe to Swim programs, I'd be glad to help facilitate that. If you'd like to put together posters, or even a session of posters that are just theme-based, bringing in your posters, soliciting those from outside. 15-minute oral presentations, these are the topics. So we have a lot of speakers here that have spoken about these issues. Water quality prediction. You done that? Yeah, it's sitting right there. Emerging risks in water quality. Monitoring water across changing hydrologic cycles, tools to mine, share, and visualize water quality data. Yeah. Innovative designs and technology for water quality monitoring and assessment. Neat things back there. So many of these topics are relevant to the work that we do. So I encourage you to not just go to the conference, to be a part of it, to present, have a poster, or consider putting together a 90-minute special session. Ken, what's your take on these conferences?
I love going to them. I've been to the last 4. I'm on the planning committee for this one. So, I mean, that's how much I value them. I'm part of the...
It's true, because I've seen them at the last 4.
It's a great one. I always walk away from these with a good sense of what other people are doing around the country. Makes me feel better about what we do here in California.
And how frequently do they come out west?
Did you say that one in Portland 8 years ago?
Yeah, not too frequently. Yeah. So this is a good one to go to. It's close by. You'll learn a lot, but I do encourage you to present, share the work that you're doing. With that, we need to think about the next direction for the work group meeting timeline. We're very thankful that people step forward, that they would like to contribute some of their time or some of their staff resources for working on a charter. Looking at the tools that were presented by Rob and Michelle, I think we all got excited about the possibilities of what we can do with the web portal. So it's not in isolation. We need to work together so that we can put together the best tools for the public and for everybody that's in watershed management, so that we can have good functioning watersheds that are safe to swim, so we can have appropriate water contact without people being at risk. And yeah, we need to define what those risks are. Is it being eaten by a shark, or is it just catching a disease, right?
Yeah, so I came up with some great brainstorming ideas as we were sitting here talking about everything. So I foresee Eric, Alicia, myself going back and kind of coming up with more defined, say, subcommittees that we would have for the Safe to Swim group to focus efforts such as a data management